friends are going to be around. Life can change on a dime. And so it may be that Matthew and others were praying, other tax collectors who had come to know Jesus Christ were praying for this particular man. The camera pans to Zacchaeus. Behold, verse 2, Luke 19, there was a man called by the name of Zacchaeus. He was a chief tax gatherer. And then Luke gives us this note, he was rich. Everything about Zacchaeus' life was the opposite of his name. The King James calls it filthy lucre. He had built his life on this wayward way of getting rich, and he had gotten to the top of his particular profession. And so notice what happens now. And he, that is Zacchaeus, verse 3, was trying to see who Jesus was. He wasn't just trying to see Jesus, as interesting as that might be. I mean, if I was living at that time and heard all this stuff about Jesus, I would definitely want to see what he looked like. Are you ever curious about radio personalities, what they look like? You know, if you hear them on the radio for a long time and you go on the internet now, it's pretty easy to find a picture of people and you look at them and you say, oh, that's not what I imagined they would look like. But Zacchaeus, it's more than just mere curiosity. Zacchaeus wants to see, verse 3, beginning of the verse, who Jesus was. That tells us that he wants to hear more about what he's about. And he's been hearing things, but he wants to see him for himself. And he was unable because of the crowd, for he was small in stature. If you want the politically correct Greek version of this, he was vertically challenged. Okay? If you want the literal Greek, it means he was a wee little man. I'm just kidding. That's not the literal Greek, but it does mean that he was little. He was small. And it was a courageous act for him to come out into this crowd. Because you could imagine he was at the top of a lot of people's hate lists. So Zacchaeus, if you notice, Zacchaeus was kind of moving into the crowd, trying to see over people's heads. And you saw, hey, there's the chief tax gatherer. You might an elbow might fly, kind of a little kick, a little nudge. Oh, Zacchaeus, I'm sorry, was that you? It would be a chance to take a shot at him. And we're going to see Zacchaeus literally move through the eye of a needle. Jesus said it's more difficult for a rich man to enter the kingdom of heaven than for a camel to go through the eye of a needle. Zacchaeus is going to squeeze through the eye of that needle. He is one of God's possibles. With man it's impossible, but with God all things are possible. But there may have been people thinking, the only thing I want to do with the eye of the needle right now is poke this guy in his eye. Because he's hurt and wounded a lot of people. And I think Zacchaeus' smallness is a picture of something else. Yes, he was small in physical stature, but I think people saw him as small, and I think he felt small. I think he knew in his soul, and I can't tell you about all the spiritual dynamics about how it's all working, but I think he felt the way he was built. The Bible tells us in Romans 3:23 that all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God. I think Zacchaeus was sensing that in his soul. There's a story about Augustine I came across, an early church father, and it was related to Augustine's conversion. It was called the mercy of dissatisfaction. Think about this. Sometimes God allows us to feel dissatisfied, and it is an act of His mercy so that we might come to know Him. So you may have experienced a lot of success in sports or business or whatever it is that you're interested in, but ultimately there's a mercy of dissatisfaction. It's based upon Ecclesiastes. And it says that when we get these things, it's kind of like chasing the wind. There's a real emptiness in achieving things. And I think that's why Zacchaeus may have sensed that in his soul. The mercy of dissatisfaction. And so notice, he kind of becomes like a little boy. And I take it that he's a more mature man. He's established in his career. But notice what he does. This is unusual for a man in this culture. He ran on ahead, kind of like a little boy at a parade. And not only did he run, but he climbed up into a sycamore tree. Now, for those of you who are about my age, I don't climb trees. Okay? When we put Christmas lights up on the house now, I'll climb a ladder. I don't climb trees. What I say is, boys, we need to put the lights up there. You climb the tree. I ain't climbing the tree. Okay? But this Zacchaeus, he became like a little boy. He was running around trying to see Jesus, and then he climbed up a tree to get a visible spot to watch the Master come on by. Maybe he thought he was kind of concealed in the tree. Maybe a little hidden, maybe incognito. Nobody's going to see me up here. But there's a real little boyness in him. It almost reminds me of Ebenezer Scrooge on Christmas Day, when he realizes that he's got another chance and he's as giddy as a schoolboy. That's kind of what you see in Zacchaeus. He's doing everything that he can to get a glimpse at Jesus and maybe something deeper. And so here comes the parade and all the people, and Zacchaeus is climbed up on a sycamore tree. I looked at pictures of sycamore trees, and they typically have a smaller trunk and wide branches. They oftentimes grew by the roadside, so they're coming down the road, and he's up there. He's found this spot. And when Jesus came to the place, so now here comes Jesus. He's passing by. He's probably all sweaty from running and getting up the tree. Jesus looked up. Can you imagine being Zacchaeus at this moment? Your heart is stirring. Here comes Jesus. Oh, that's him. All right. And Jesus all of a sudden looks up in the tree that you are in. And what are Jesus' words? He said to him, Zacchaeus, hurry and come down. Now, have they ever met before? No. Zacchaeus was just trying to get a glimpse of who he was, trying to know who he was, but Jesus knew Zacchaeus. And I would submit to you that this is one of those divine appointments similar to the woman, the Samaritan woman at the well. It says in John 4, I think it's verse 4, Jesus had to pass through Samaria. He had a divine appointment with a woman that in that culture no one, no Jewish male would talk to, but he engaged her, and there was a divine appointment. And often they would just avoid Samaria. They wouldn't even pass through that part, but Jesus did. And Jesus calls up to Zacchaeus and says, hurry or make haste and come down, for today I must stay at your house. When do you think the last time someone said to Zacchaeus, hey bro, we really need to hang out, man. I've been really wanting to spend some time with you. I'm sure Zacchaeus never got those kinds of invitations. I'm sure there was nobody who was really seeking to have lunch with this guy. But Jesus says, today I must stay at your house, calls him by name, and the beauty is that God knows all of our names. We shouldn't be surprised at this. Isaiah 40, 25 and 26 says, to whom then will you liken me that I should be his equal, says the Holy One. Lift up your eyes on high, Isaiah 40, 26, and see who has created these stars, the one who leads forth their host by number. He, God, calls them all by name. He knows the name of every star because of the greatness of his might, the strength of his power. Not one of them is missing. And I looked up some astronomy facts. One conservative estimate in our Milky Way galaxy is that there's over 100 billion stars. But I read another stat that says in our Milky Way galaxy there's probably 200 to 400 billion stars just in the Milky Way, and God calls each one of them by name. How many people are on the planet right now? About 6 billion? 200 to 400 billion stars. He knows them by name. And the whole of Isaiah 40, the whole argument when you follow it, is that God is trying to say, Israel, I have not forgotten about you. I named the stars, and you are more important. Because Israel was saying, where's the Lord? Maybe he's given up on us. But the Lord says, I must. This is divine intervention and intention. I must stay at your house. What did Zacchaeus do? Well, he hurried, verse 6, and he came down, and he received him gladly. Zacchaeus was excited. He came down that tree as quick as he could, and he was excited about receiving the Lord. He was kind of like a giddy school child on Christmas. And so he hurried, he ran down. And you wonder, as all the people are there, what do you think the people are thinking? Well, if we think of a positive note, they'd be thinking, this is great, finally, someone's going to talk some sense into Zacchaeus. Awesome, praise the Lord. We don't mind waiting. We'll take a little time, we'll mill around outside, we'll get some refreshments. This is great, this is awesome. I've been praying for Zacchaeus for years. We'd like to think that's how it went. But actually the next verse says, when they saw it, they all began to grumble. This word for grumble in the Bible is a great word because it has this idea of a low murmur. Murmur, 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 murmur. Why did he come to my murmur? Why did he get my murmur? right? But here we get a little clarification about the murmuring. They said, he's gone to be the guest of a man, say it with me, brothers and sisters, who is a sinner. Can you believe it? There they go. He's going to go into his house. Zacchaeus, the impure publican. I can't believe it. What's the world coming to? Have they not been hanging around Jesus? I think they've been hanging around the Pharisees and scribes for too long. You know, they murmured pretty much at everything Jesus did. Have you ever noticed that if you hang around somebody who does a lot of murmuring, you start murmuring? Well, that's what was happening. And the two strode off together, and rather than the crowd rejoicing, they had serious questions. How could Jesus go and dine with a man like this? And we're not told from the account. But Jesus stayed for a while. Notice the verse says he's gone, kind of a past tense there, to be the guest. They watched the two stride off together. And Luke doesn't fill in the details, but Jesus has gone into the house. And we're going to see in the next few verses that Jesus is going to declare that salvation has come to this house. You see, what we don't often think about was Zacchaeus.